What is up, nerds? This is Mr. Storm, and today we're going to talk about web languages. So far, we've only talked about HTML and a little bit of CSS, but there are a lot of languages out there, and we're going to talk about them and the differences between them here in this presentation. Once it loads, I'll go ahead and pop it up. Alrighty. So, web languages. So, we're going to talk about client-side scripting first. Client-side scripting. And what that means is this is any code that runs within a web browser. So your web browser temporarily downloads all of the files from a file server and in turn displays a static web page. You should be able to view these files even if you've lost your internet connection as long as you left your web browser open. So things like HTML5. All the stuff that we've been writing is client-side scripting, meaning that code is actually run on the user's computer, right? So the user's computer opens up that file in a web browser, and that code is run and compiled and displayed on their computer, okay? So again, if their internet connection goes down, they can still see your web page as long as they don't click anything or close out of the browser. So HTML is a client-side scripting language. It is the standard markup language for structures and formats and content on the web. Page elements like titles, headings, text, and links are all included in the HTML document. You guys know that by now, hopefully. It is pretty much the language for the internet. Every website you've been to uses HTML in some form. HTML5 is the newest version, and it's the one that I've been teaching you this whole time. HTML5 is great. It is the bee's knees. It is the cat's pajamas. And this is an example of what HTML5 looks like. And if you don't know this by now, you are not on the lesson you should be on. All right, CSS. We've dug a little bit into CSS, but we're going to dig real deep into it in the next semester or the next term. So CSS is a style sheet language that allows for web developers to set it and forget it. It works hand in hand with HTML. It lets you define a look and format of multiple web pages at once, right? So we can externally link all of our web pages to one single style sheet, and then the styles that are defined in that sheet will be applied to every page that we've linked it to. So things like the color, the layout, fonts, those are all specified in the one file. And this is an example of what CSS looks like. And again, you should already know this because we've done a little bit of CSS work in this term. JavaScript. JavaScript is something that we talked about once, and I didn't have you do any JavaScript stuff, which is fine because that's not really the scope of this course. But JavaScript is the programming language for the server side. Okay, so JavaScript allows you to do animation, lets you build games, lets you make apps, interactivity with your web pages, other dynamic effects, you can apply those to your web page. So after HTML and CSS, JavaScript is the most ubiquitous of the client-side scripts. You like that word, ubiquitous? Do you know what it means? You know what it means? It means like everywhere. Like JavaScript is everywhere. Almost every web page you see today uses JavaScript in some form. And this is an example of what JavaScript looks like. So this is a script. Go back. This is a script element inside of a HTML page. And so inside the script element, there is JavaScript code right here. So this is actually a function, and inside this function, there's a bunch of things that it does, things like a for loop with an if-else statement, stuff like that. So that's what JavaScript looks like. You also have ActionScript, which is it's the language used for Adobe Flash. It's especially well suited for rich internet applications that use Flash animation and streaming audio and video and things like that. ActionScript used to be the hotness. A couple years ago, ActionScript was everything, but some of the newer browsers are kind of wonky, and they're not really as compatible with ActionScript as they are with JavaScript. So if you're, it's really up to your preference what you want to learn, but I like JavaScript, and I've only really ever used JavaScript, and that's all I teach. But if you want to learn ActionScript, it is available as well. And this is what ActionScript looks like. It looks a lot like JavaScript. Honestly, they share a lot of the same attributes. JavaScript and ActionScript are both object-oriented programming languages. They do basically all the same thing. So it really is up to your preference. All right, so that was client side. Let's talk about the server side for a second. So at this point, you should already know that whenever someone goes to a web page, what they're doing is they're basically making a connection to a server somewhere. And that server hosts files, and those files might be HTML files with CSS files and JavaScript files, and they are basically copying those files from that server onto their home computer or their phone or whatever device they're using. There are other files on the server that the user does not have access to, files that manage the backend, files that handle interaction with a database, or files that store specific information. These scripting languages deal with the server side of the equation. So all websites need to be hosted or stored in a database on a web server. The server-side scripting really refers to any code that facilitates the transfer of data from that web server to a browser. Okay, so server-side scripts are also more secure because the source code remains on the server and your user has no access to it. They can't see it, they can't manipulate it, they can't do anything to it whatsoever. Okay, so server-side scripts are usually more secure. PHP, that's a pretty ubiquitous server-side language. It's used by 75% of all web servers. It's a general-purpose server-side scripting language. It does, everything that you need in a server-side language. It is open source, meaning it's not owned and developed and curated by a specific company. It's kind of a community language. There's a huge online community that supports it, and it's compatible across multiple platforms. Basically, when a new platform comes up, someone in the community might go, hey, I can write a library that I can add to PHP's core library set that will make it compatible with this new platform. So we don't have to wait for companies to roll out new things because you are encouraged and allowed to create new scripts for PHP. PHP is most often used by websites with a lower traffic demands. This is an example of what PHP looks like. There's a PHP open tag and close tag to designate in your HTML page that, hey, we're doing some PHP here. Now, even if you have this on your HTML code, it still won't show up in your browser. So like, for example, if I'm on a web page and I go inspect element and I look at the HTML code on that web page and there's PHP on the page, I won't see the PHP. It'll leave it out because it's a server-side language. So we have variables in PHP. We have a for each loop and if else. It works a lot of the same way as JavaScript and ActionScript. It's a programming language, so it uses a lot of the same elements. But that's what PHP looks like. Java. But Mr. Storm, you already talked about JavaScript, and so this is hello. Okay, here's the thing. Java and JavaScript are two different languages. They're two different languages, okay? Some people, when they're just starting out and they want to sound cool, they'll use them interchangeably, but they are wrong. JavaScript and Java are different. The big difference being JavaScript is a client-side language. Java is a server-side. So it's a server-side language of choice for large-scale websites with high volume of traffic. So Sam's Club, Amazon, Apple App Store, they all use Java-based frameworks. Okay. The reason why it's popular is because they outperform other frameworks in raw speed benchmark tests. Now, Java is not open source, it's developed by a company, so the quality is definitely better, and it can handle a higher output of higher volume of data transfer than PHP can. But there are drawbacks to that as well. And this is what Java looks like. So really a lot of the same stuff. It kind of looks the same as most of the other languages we've looked at so far. You have Python. Python is a general purpose programming language. You can use Python to create tons of stuff. It's really easy to learn, really easy to write, because Python was developed with an emphasis on code readability. Python was built so that you can look at it and actually kind of read it and see what things are, what each thing is doing just by reading it, right? It has a large standard library, which means that your code can be really, really short and very simple and easy to read. Shopzilla, Yahoo Maps, the National Weather Service, these are all websites that use Python. And this is an example of Python code. So you can really see like for name in. So this is a for loop in Python, which for loops usually take up a ton of lines to get everything right. In this, you just say it's a for loop. This is a file handler line of code with another for, some if-else statements. So it's really supposed to be super condensed, and that's why Python's great. Ruby is similar to Python. It was designed to make programming more productive. It uses short, simple code. It's really flexible, but it's different. But it differs in its syntax. So in Python, there's only one right way to program things. So you can only, if you want to do, say, a for loop, for example, you can only write it one way and actually expect it to work. In Ruby, however, there are multiple ways to do the same thing, and some of them might be more efficient than others. So there are multiple ways to write a for loop. There are multiple ways to do if-else conditional statements. There's more than one way to do a switch, and so there are a lot of different ways to do things in Ruby, and some of them are better than others. So that's the big difference. And this is what Ruby looks like. Again, it looks pretty much the same as everything we've been looking at. All right, so that's it for this presentation. I'm going to really quickly show you how to complete the assignment for today. So if you open up this web languages assignment, this is a very short thing. I just wanted to make sure that you came out of this with some information. So there are 5 questions here. First question, what's the difference between a server-side language and a client-side language? Just give me your answer in your own words. Please don't copy off of my slideshow. Come on, man. That's a super dumb move. But give me your answer in your own words. Which language is used to create the structure of a web page? All you got to do is select your answer and highlight it, right? Let's say JavaScript, which is not the answer, but let's say it's JavaScript. You just go up here, you select the text, go to highlight, and you just put a yellow highlight on it, right? And that way you can indicate what your answer is. Pretty easy stuff. Question 3, which of the following is a server-side scripting language? You just pick the one. Which of the following is a client-side programming language that allows us to change the behavior of a website? Okay, pick the right answer. And then question 5, why are there so many different languages used in web development? Ooh, that's a good one. So I definitely want this in your own words as well. I want you to tell me, why do you think there are so many languages? Why are there so many languages out there, and why did I have to dedicate an entire lesson just to teach you about all of them, especially if you're never really going to touch most of them that we talked about? So tell me, why are there so many different languages in web development? Your own opinion, your own guess as to why that's the case. When you're done answering these questions, you can go ahead and upload your document, and then you are good for this lesson. You can move on. Thank you for paying attention. I will see you next time.